Hello amphibian lovers, it's Amphibian Boss here, and today I'm going to be doing a video on some things you would like or should keep if you're going to be keeping a large collection of amphibians. Some of this can work for reptiles, but most of it, since I'm Amphibian Boss and all I keep is amphibians, I'm just going to be saying this is basically for keeping amphibians. There's some things here there's some things I'll be missing that you should have for reptiles, but since I'm doing it for amphibians, I'm missing that out. Recently, Jake from JakesGotHerps just uploaded a video that's about keeping reptiles and amphibians and what to keep, what to have if you're going to have a large collection. And I'm not copying his video at all. I want to let everybody know so you don't get hates, and I also want to let him know that I'm not copying his video. I'm going to be doing basically a shout out for him. He makes great videos. You should check out that video that I'm talking about specifically, and also his channel in all. He makes really good videos. He's got a really cool collection. And I'll put a link to his channel in the description below. I could do an annotation, but I'll just put it in the link of the description below, and you guys can check that out. So most of this stuff's for amphibians, so let's get started. Right here I have a spray bottle. Most of things like salamanders and tree frogs, you'd want to have a spray bottle because keeping the humidity up is very important when keeping amphibians. So have a spray bottle. Depending on how many you have, want to have one that's full of water. This is a good spray pump that is actually for farm animals. It's very durable. You can get them at the dollar store for a lot cheaper, but they break quickly and they don't have the very good pump on them. Get a big bottle if you're going to have a lot of amphibians. If you only have like a tree frog, you may not need a huge water bottle, but it's good to have. Just have it right there so you don't have to refill it constantly. So that's one thing you should have. Now tweezers or forceps are good to have. Plastic, I just have the plastic ones. I'm not going to go out and spend $10 on the big steel ones, and since now they're stainless steel, they're not going to rust underneath water. But plastic works better for being around water a lot. If you're going to have something that's bigger or you need the forceps for something, then I would suggest getting the big forceps, but I just use these for feeding. I just need the small ones. These work for feeding, hand feeding, also works for picking out nasty things in the water or in any of the tanks. If you don't like that, it can be kind of gross. So these are really good to have, so I would suggest having tweezer forceps. Plastic containers, great to have. Little plastic containers you can keep, if you have amphibians that small, you can keep them in there. Insects and food items can go in there most of the time, or if you're doing, most of the time if you're sucking food out of the water, I like to put them in there, or mixed bloodworms. You can keep amphibians in there because I have some that are small enough. I keep my newt larvae in these containers. Not this one specifically because there's no water, but these also have a good locking lid. Anything with a locking lid on air holes is good to have. These work good for a lot of things. Small critter keepers like this, great to have with a locking lid. There's a little handle, not really that helpful. These little lids, and then the lid also pops off the top. And that locks so nothing can escape. And then keeping, I'll move this big boy here. I kept a salamander in there, and it's in a different tank at the moment. That's also a good tank to have if you're keeping something larger or doing feeding outside of the tank. Then you can also make the butter container things. I made that a while ago because I didn't have any containers, so it's a little homemade DIY you can make. Now another thing to have that's great is nets. There's a big net with soft netting. These are good to have for aquatic amphibians like clawed frogs and newts and things. And there's some smaller ones. That's not really useful. But the big ones are good for a lot of different things, since frogs and newts and other amphibians can be very squirmy once in a while. I prefer to use my hands for catching a lot of my amphibians, but if you ever need a little bit of help there, net's always helpful. And I always use a net for catching my Indonesian floating frog because they jump a lot and they're not very easy to catch with their bare hands. So, and they're very small. You don't want them to lose them in your house. Let's move these over here. A knife, great to have. Sharp, doesn't have to be sharp. Cutting worms and stirring up bloodworms and other things, cutting the cubes up, smaller pieces. Lots of useful things for a knife. Depending on how old you are, ask your parents if you're allowed to use a knife, because some kids aren't. Calcium, mostly for reptiles, because if you don't give calcium to a reptile, it's going to die or is not going to live very long. Amphibians don't need the calcium as much as reptiles, but they still need it, depending on what you're feeding. I keep my firebelly toads and my green tree frogs, and I usually only feed them crickets. And my white tree frog eats mostly crickets because he doesn't hand feed. I put a lot of this calcium on there because that's all I feed them, so that supplements their food. If you're keeping aquatic animals like newts and clawed frogs and other things like that, you don't have to have this since it just washes off. I wouldn't even waste your money on calcium if you only have newts. Water conditioner, I don't think this is full, but Beta Safe or Repti Safe or whatever it's called, good to have if you have chlorine or chloramines in your water. My water at my house comes from a cistern and it's only filtered. We don't even really drink it. We drink from town water that we get in the big bottles. So I don't use this a lot. Sometimes I use it since I have it. I don't use it a lot since we have cistern water, and it's basically just rainwater going through my cistern in a filter. So I use it a little bit, not as much. Don't give me any hate on that because I know what I'm doing. This is a turkey baster, if you don't know, for sucking up the turkey grease and, oh, there's water in there. Sucking up turkey grease and juice and stuff like that and squirting it in the turkey. I don't even know what they're actually used for, but I use this for sucking up old bloodworms and pellets and poop and all that kind of gross stuff in the water with a lot of aquatic animals. If you don't have aquatic animals, don't even worry about it. Don't steal your parents' turkey baster like I did, because it's not really worth the time. I don't think they want this back because that's a bloodworm and it's all moldy and gross. But it works for sucking up water, doing water changes, and squirting it into the tank also. I'll have to go grab this stuff that's over here. Ceramic bowls from the dollar store. These are for any plant really. They're waterproof and they're glazed so you can put insects in them. These work great for food dishes, the small ones, and then the medium ones also work good for food dishes if you're feeding a lot of animals, or if you just need a big food dish, I guess. And they also work for water dishes. I use these for water dishes a lot, and there's a big one. This is around 7 inches diameter. That's really good for a water dish. If you drop them, they will break. They are ceramic pottery, but they're very cheap. And then I'll also show you another one here. This is also ceramic. These ones will break as the same, but these are like $3 when the other ones are $1 for 3. So you can buy these. I don't really like the kidney-shaped ones, the bedpan ones. I like the round ones better, and they have a better look to them in an aquarium or a terrarium. Ceramic pots are cheap too, make great hides for little fish tanks or frogs and newts and such. And then like that, hides, coconut hides are great, they're cheap to make. I think you can buy them too, but they cost a lot. And then a piece of cork bark and rocks and things make good hiding places also. Hiding for amphibians is very important since they can get stressed out very quickly or easily, whatever you're doing. And then here's another water dish, can be used as hide or for its normal purpose, water. I don't really like these. The gray ones are okay, but they are really deep. They take up so much space, and they don't hold. I have water dishes here that'll hold the same amount of water, and they don't take as much space because they have these bulky plastic things. These are okay for lizards. I don't really like them. I just got this for free at a yard sale or something. They're useful to have, and they're nice, but I'm sorry about that. Bumped the camera. But I'm not a fan of those, depending on your opinion on those. Also, I wanted to say, having this here. Screening is a good thing to have if you're making little containers or if you're doing false bottom drainage layers. That stuff's great to have. It's just screening for windows. It's like the fiberglass screening or whatever. Or you can get it plastic too. Doesn't really matter. You can get that at the hardware store quite cheap. Last thing I wanted to show you, which I already pulled out because I screwed up making this video, are these rocks here. And I have one thing else to show you. I forgot all about it. And to try not to forget all this stuff. These river rocks. I probably have around 5 pounds of this stuff. I have way too much. I've just kind of collected this over the years. You can buy this at the dollar store, hardware store, Home Depot, wherever you're buying it. But it doesn't cost a lot. It's way cheaper than fish gravel. And what I use it for is accenting tanks and, you know, holding down the repti carpet and things in the aquatic tanks. When you're keeping an amphibian that is messy and they don't like filtration, like newts, my clawed frog doesn't mind it, but I prefer not to have a filter at all because it's bad for feeding and such. It just makes current. I don't like current at all. If you know me, I don't like filters. So these rocks are great because they accent the tank just by putting this in the corner. You don't have gravel in a tank, which they can ingest. Also holds a lot of dirt when you don't have filters. And it's a lot of explaining, but in the end, these basically make up, 5 of these spread out in a tank, makes up for a whole thing of gravel. It just makes it look a lot nicer, and you don't have all that dirt trapped underneath. Now you can fill the whole tank up with these and use it as a actual substrate, but you don't have to do that. You can just keep it, just put a bunch of these laid out in the tank, and you can see in my new tank, they're all over the place. Same with my toads, they're all over the place. They accent the tank a little better, but without having that substrate that can hold a lot of dirt crap, I guess. I got some smaller ones here. You can buy them in 2 different sizes. They come in these little bags. You don't want to have them all in the normal bags because they break easily, but these are brand new. And the other ones are all in this big bin here. And there's probably 5-6 pounds in here. There's a lot there. You can have a workout picking that up and bench pressing that. And the last thing I wanted to say, you could have rulers. I would kind of suggest having either a 6-inch ruler depending on how big your animals are. These just work good for measuring and just monitoring how long your amphibians are getting, especially with like salamanders and newts. Also, if you're breeding them, getting the measurement on how big they are, and water levels too. Having a 12-inch ruler or 30-centimeter ruler helps. Having a longer tape measure helps too. If you don't think there's anything that gets bigger than 20 inches that people are keeping in the pet trade, but like snakes too, you want to have something long. 12-inch or 6-inch ruler is good enough if you're keeping amphibians. So that's basically it, guys. I'll do a little hover over all this stuff here. Long video, 13, probably 14 minutes. A lot of me talking, but it's useful to have a lot of these things. And food is not included in this. Food, depending on how many amphibians and what amphibians you have, that's depending on what food you need. So that's basically it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll leave JakesGotHerps channel link in the description below. Post a comment, think how you like this video, and any ideas for the future videos that I'll be making. Remember to subscribe and check out my channel. Thanks, guys.